of the headlines on all the websites and the news bulletins all over the world. The climate summit, the UN climate summit taking place as we speak in Paris, with the participation of hundreds of heads of states and heads of governments from all over the globe trying to save the planet. Also, we do have here in Cairo the 35th Cairo Climate Talk. The impact of climate change is disastrous, catastrophic, if we do not interfere and act immediately in every aspect of life. And today it's on agriculture in specific, as we do have an expert in that. We are very much delighted to discuss this very important topic with our dear guests live here in the studio. If you permit me, sir, ladies first. Laura Ogzela, head, am I pronouncing your name right? Okay. Head of the scientific department from the German embassy in Cairo, and Professor Dr. Hani Al-Katib, forest biometrician and also the advisor of the President for Agriculture. Thank you very much for being with us, sir. Thank you very much for being with us, ma'am.
Good morning. I'll start with Ms. Laura here. How do you see the importance of the 21st session of the UN climate summit in Paris, which is taking place with the participation of the world leaders? Do you believe that they could actually reach a concrete recommendations or a common recommendations for combating or facing the repercussions of the climate change?
Well, I think we cannot underestimate the significance of the 21st COP of the UNFCCC Climate Summit. I think we have to reach an agreement, and there is no other choice, in my opinion. We had a disastrous negotiation in Copenhagen some years ago, and well, we can already see the impacts of climate change and the severe repercussions climate change has on different countries, especially here in Egypt, and especially when we look at sectors like agriculture and water. So I think it now is really urgent to act. I hope we can reach an agreement. Of course, there are still diverse positions, but yes, I think we have no other choice. We have to reach at least a comprehensive agreement which is binding and which is, well, including all states.
Yeah. Professor Al-Katib, when it comes to agriculture, I think that there should be such a link between the world climate change and agriculture. And whenever it comes to deserts and whenever it comes to Africa in specific, as we are such a very rich continent, but unfortunately the most affected by climate change, despite the fact that the main causes or the main reasons are the big powers or the big economic powers of the world. Can we do have just first a brief idea on the effect of climate change on agriculture, and especially in Egypt?
For sure. Okay, maybe the impact of the climate change will have maybe some positive impact in the northern area of the world, maybe in Europe. Maybe we can expect over there an increase of species. Yeah. But when you look at Africa or the southern part of the world, the impact will be completely different. Here we are fearing from decrease of species, and actually we are thinking now to find species that can be grown in the drought area and saline area. And when we look at the nature has a stable ecosystems when it has high biodiversity, and we will suffer a lot of that. We have, particularly in Egypt, a lot of impact, like the seawater rise, bad impact in the agriculture, and actually we do not have yet any technology to combat the climate change. But I think we are thinking within the advisory board of a system, a stable system, system which can mitigate really the climate change. And here we are looking for a stable system, diverse system, but we have also to protect the agriculture. So there are some technology to compete the climate change, but till now we are not doing really, we are not going to the right direction. But also it's very important also the resources. The limited resources will have maybe impact on the water, yeah, and this is really, we have to think of doing something in that in Africa and particularly in Egypt.
Sir, sorry for interruption here, but what should be taken? What measures should be taken to start moving in to the right directions, as you have kindly mentioned now? What steps should be taken?
First of all, I think all of us know that the climate change is an part of the human impact.
Yes, of course.
So, and actually, when we look at Germany, we see that there were awareness since now over 30 or 40 years about the impact of climate change, about the green philosophy, and so on. And I think we're still missing the awareness. So we have, first of all, the people should be aware about the problem and the catastrophe which maybe follow the climate change. But we have really to think always of, like when I'm thinking about a solution, I look at the natural ecosystems. And the natural ecosystems are always stable. They are using the resources in the right way. The natural ecosystem have high stability in terms of high resistance and high resilience. So actually this is very important. So all what we think, we have to make any system we are working in stable. This is very important. We have to save in our resources like water. We cannot, for example, in Egypt, use 68% of our water resources in agriculture. We have to find a system which we can save a lot of water in the agriculture sector, but also everyone have to save in using the water.
Yeah. Sir, what you've just said, I think it's universal.
It is.
I mean, ma'am, when it comes to what Dr. Hani said, I think it should be implemented not only in Egypt, but all over the globe. Dr. Hani kindly mentioned that the impacts of the climate change is different when it comes to the northern side of the Mediterranean if compared to the south. Is it true? I mean, do you find that in Germany, for example, the measures taken to fight climate change or to stop this catastrophe from taking place, to save the planet, as I said in my introduction, are the measures different according to each country?
I mean, you're completely right. Everyone has to act, not only Egyptians, Germans and people all over the world, because it's a global problem, it's a global phenomenon. We have limited resources on the globe, and we have to find a way to use these resources, which are scarce, in an efficient way. And when it
the
comes
word
to
limited resources implemented also on the European countries, and here you can talk more about Germany.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
in some respects, we really have the same problems. When we look at rising sea levels, also Germany's north coast is affected and is already affected, as is Egypt's north coast at the Mediterranean.
Yes, indeed.
And we had a session of the CARI Climate Talks also on rising sea levels, and we had German experts and Egyptian experts, and actually what they've been discussing was pretty much the same measures that are taken. When we talk about saving water, saving energy, moving to green energy and to more efficient ways and of using water and resources in agriculture, it's pretty much the same discussion we have in Germany as we have in Egypt and all over the world. Maybe, as Dr. Hani kindly said, There is a bit more of awareness in Germany, which might also be due to the fact that water and electricity is not subsidized in Germany, which means that we pay a higher price, and people are actually, if they don't save water, their bill increases a lot. So this is kind of an economic incentive that makes people more aware of the value of the resource. So I find it very important that also Egypt is taking steps, and they do actually, to slowly decrease subsidies, because this will change the minds of the people and gives a real value, which it has, to the resources that are scarce.
Yeah.
Dr. Hani, can you please tell us about your expectations from the current Paris Climate Summit, which is taking place now? Do you believe that certain recommendations need to be taken immediately in order to try to save the universe from the repercussions of the climate change?
Actually, yes. And I think Mrs. Laura had said at the beginning, we need to do something. I think we are a little bit late in our decision. And the politician really have the responsibility to come to a commitment now to save our earth. We have limited resources. We are not using the resources in a proper way.
Indeed,
We have a high greenhouse emission. The industry playing really sometimes also a role that we are thinking only of the quick profit worldwide. And this is one of the main problems. We don't have the resources. We have limited resources. And there is no sustainable way. We are talking about sustainability.
Sustainability is going to take a big part of our interview, sir, but let me, I'm not going to terrify people, but let's face the problem as is. But there were scientific reports, I don't know if they are that much scientific or no, saying, for example, that the delta provinces or the delta area of Egypt is going to disappear by the year 2050, for example, I think 2050 or something like that, if we do not act that fast to prevent this from happening. Is this true, or these are exaggerations?
I cannot really assess this point, but there are a lot of models which are different. We hear that maybe we have more rain, but this is in a short time, which is really affects the agriculture and everything, and fear to floods, for example. But let us maybe, with such scenarios, I do not agree very much with it till 250 that the delta area will disappear. But I have really to tell you, I'm a scientist. I have to assess that really exactly to see which criteria is used in such models. But we have an impact. We can see it in front of us now, and we have to change our habit. But I think this is a part which should be done by the industry, by the people. So all of us need really to change, to know awareness again, to be aware
and by the
about
scientific research centers in many of the places. And topping the list here, the scientific department in the German embassy, for example. Have you conducted such research on the topic we are talking about? The impact of climate change here?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, I think, in April we tackled this exact topic of rising sea levels, and I don't have the exact numbers in mind, and I think I'm also not an expert on this. But what is true is that many big and very populated cities of Egypt are located next to the sea. And if we just lean back and do nothing, which will not happen, because I think everybody is aware, and if the temperature constantly rises, the polar caps will melt, the sea levels will rise. If we do nothing, I think we expect between 1 and 1.5 meters rise in the Mediterranean. And I mean, then just look at the cities and look how close they are located.
Very close
to the sea. I mean, I don't think whole cities will disappear, but what might definitely happen is that people might have to be relocated more to the inside of the country, and some parts of the coastline will just be taken more to the country. So But I hope this will not happen, because
We
this
all
is
hope so.
exactly
But
why
what
people
measures,
meet in
Ms.
Paris.
Laura, were taken up till this moment to face all the threats? Because, as you have kindly mentioned here, that the sea level would increase because of the melting of the polars. So how can we face the threats? And we are not seeing real measures taken by the world countries.
Well, I think we saw measures taken, because what happened in Peru, which was the pre-COP to the big COP in Paris, countries were asked to submit INDCs, their internally determined national contributions, and countries did. Basically all the countries did, also Egypt did. Germany or the European countries did, and already with the contributions we have now, and this should be binding actually, they calculated and came to the result that temperatures will rise, I think, 2.7 degrees Celsius until I don't know the exact number, I think 2050. And this is still too much. But this was exactly an attempt to have all the countries on board, and every country as it can actually, and the capabilities are there, has to contribute. Some countries contribute more. Europe committed to reduce greenhouse gases by 40% until 2030. And I think everybody has to do an effort, because, I mean, if China emits, it will still have an effect on the Mediterranean and on Egypt especially. So we cannot differentiate between countries. We have to have every country on the boat, otherwise it will sink.
Dr. Al-Katib, sustainability. And I think that this word itself can take the rest of our interview. Sustainable development is a key word worldwide, and it should be implemented on every aspect of life in every field. Now, here we should speak about, with you, of course, according to your specialty, about sustainable agriculture.
Okay, but maybe if you allow me one point to comment on that. Actually, we have the impact of the climate change is actually according to the mistake due to not using sustainable system in the world, in particular the industrial country. And now we have a problem here in the poorer country. And I think it's one of the most important points actually. There should be support to mitigate the climate change in the poorer country. Yeah, and I believe really Germany is leading in Europe in reducing the emission and so on, even if it's not everything is realized in the way they wish. Yeah, the industry play an important role, but the industry is a global industry. It's not a German, or it's not an American, or So actually there should be a lot of things done by the industry, and the industry sometimes do not let the politician. The politician can think in a way or another, but it will not be effective if the industry do not cooperate with the politician. But
I think what you have just said, sir, is the main reason behind the failure of protocols signed to combat this phenomena, since the Kyoto till those after. Because whenever it comes to money and whenever it comes to investments and industry, money will win. But this is not the word sustainability. I mean, as Dr. Hani said, just to look forward and to think about the coming generations, not to think about the coming 5 years or something. And here the word sustainability should be the key word, if you permit me to say so, or if you agree with me, both of you.
Actually, we forced scientists or forced people knows exactly what is the word sustainability. Sustainability originated from forestry, and it was a German forest manager, Karl von Karlowitz, who has talked about the word sustainability. And what does it mean? It means that we do not cut the trees, we cut only the part of the trees which is grown in 1 year. So it means I keep it sustained. Yeah, and in terms to provide the social aspect that people can work. If we do not have forest, the people could not work. There is no wood is produced. So the quick cut is wrong, and the word sustainability is always used in the forest sector. So now everyone is using the word sustainability. I am afraid that this word is misunderstanding by a lot of sectors. So sustainability means there is no time limit. We are keeping things sustained. Yeah, but in terms of the social,
Yes.
social aspect, environmental and economical aspect. Yeah, so actually this would be excellent if we are really applying sustainability, not talking about sustainability, but the word we are really not applying it. Now, sustainable agriculture. Now, if we are using, we talked before about the limited resources in the world. So we cannot, and again I'll say we have to look to the nature. And when we look at the nature, nature has a stable systems. And so we have to think like the nature and try to create a sustainable agriculture system. I cannot use chemical, like synthetic fertilizer, herbicide, pesticide, and so on in agriculture. So I damage the soil, damage the water, so it comes to the degradation of the water, of the soil, but also I have polluted water, and we have to stop that. Then we have to think about more near to nature agriculture system. We are using that, by the way, in the forest. In Germany we say near to nature forest. So we are trying to do as the nature do, or the natural forest operating, so we are trying to do that. So in agriculture system we have to do that. We have to stop this high amount of chemical used in agriculture. We have to think of and systems which we do not use, we do not every year a change, we have only one crops, we have to have high diversity. We do not leave the soil bare after each crop, and so on. So we have really to think, and there maybe you have heard about system which is called permaculture. Permaculture, but this is for a smaller part, or in garden, or on the roofs, and so on. But we, similar to that, but it's a little bit different. We're thinking even on larger area, not to use such chemicals to save in our water resource, but we have to protect the agriculture area, particularly when we look in Egypt. We are here in a desert land. It means we have wind and we have sand. And the wind and sand damage very much the agriculture area. So how I make it sustainable, or we talk about sustainable farming. So I have, first of all, to protect the agriculture area, but actually the cities, from wind and sand damage. And this is very important. So we have to establish what we call a windbreak. And when we look in Egypt, we do not have a real windbreaks. The windbreaks just to mark the land, but not to protect and to change the microclimate for the agriculture area. And when climate, we save water, and this have a really and very important effect. So first of all, we have to protect, then we come to the sustainable farming. I have to avoid using one crop. We have to think of diversity. So it means each plant or each species will give the other species their requirement. For example, a plant needs a nitrogen, and other plant produce nitrogen. Okay, so there is a synergy. So, and when we are having high diversity, we reach the high stability, so that the nutrition cycle is completed within such agriculture system. We have also to combine the, for example, aquaculture with agriculture. So I can use the aquaculture right in the beginning, and the water after that can be used, which is have some nutrition, can be used to irrigate the agriculture area.
Hydroponics.
Of course.
Yeah, and such measures should be done really to reach sustainability. By the way, it looks fantastic when it is diverse. Yeah, the agriculture will look a little bit different. Maybe you have been in Aswan and so on. You still see part which you have different layers of,
Yes, it's
of trees
so
and the
beautiful.
crops, and yeah, and we should actually do that and not think only of one crop in larger area, like sometimes in the larger agricultural business is done. This is really important: saving water, saving the environment. Yeah, have high quality of water and but soil, and of healthy food. Very important.
Very important, of course.
Yeah.
Ms. Laura, can you tell us about, from your point of view, how the developed countries, which were the main source of the problems here, the industrialized countries, and all the emissions which they produced, could help the developing nations in facing the repercussions of the climate change?
I mean, what is part of the negotiations and what will be part of the Paris Agreement is a financial mechanism called the Green Climate Fund, in which countries give money into that fund. Germany already promised quite an enormous sum to this fund, and it will be used for both mitigation and adaptation measures in countries. So countries can, looking at their INDCs, looking at their national contributions, they can identify focus sectors, they can identify measures and projects that will help mitigate or adapt to climate change, and then they can apply to the Green Climate Fund and get the financial means to finance these projects. Of course, we also have to talk about technological transfer measures, and I don't think that that European countries will be all against it. It will be part of the agreement, and this is very clear that it's both financial and technological transfers.
Indeed.
On the screen, we do have on the right the arrival of the heads of states to participate in the inaugural session of the UN Climate Summit taking place in Paris. And on the left, we do have some of the videos you have kindly given us, Dr. El-Katib, if you want to comment on that.
Here we can see the sustainable farming, which we are talking now within the advisory board of the president of Egypt about how should be the future agriculture system in Egypt. You can see here the protection with the windbreaks or the trees. You can see the diversity. We have fruit trees, different kind of fruit trees, and field crops and vegetables. But you see here now the aquaculture, yeah, and we have also some greenhouses, yeah, to try to improve the profit of the farming, yeah. And you see also that you have a biogas, which we use here, the waste of the agriculture in the biogas to produce energy. But we can see also some windmills and solar energy and photovoltaic, yeah. So this is really, we are using here completely a green...
multi-sources, but far from fossil fuel.
Yeah.
But whenever it comes to nuclear power, as far as I know, that Germany intend to get rid of its nuclear reactors, I think by the year 2020 or 2022. And this means that Germany should depend on other sources of energy. But fossil fuel is not going to be one of them if Germany, as a big power, want to participate or share in fighting or in trying to stop the climate change for the best interest of the globe, not only of Germany. Is this a little bit contradictory?
I don't think it's contradictory, but maybe you have to see both sides of it, and then sustainability comes in again. So Germany has this massive program called the Energiewende, energy transition, and it includes both. The most important thing is to increase the share of renewables, especially wind and solar energy in Germany. We already have, I think, almost 20% of renewables in our energy mix, and we will increase this up to 80%, which also comes along with like phasing out fossils. Of course, the German development, German economic growth depended very much on the use of coal. But this is also a plan to phase out because, of course, when we think about greenhouse gas emissions, it's not very sustainable. So we really have to work on this. But this is actually in the plan, and it will be phased out. At the same time, Germany decided to phase out nuclear. Nuclear, of course, is not contributing to the emission of greenhouse gases, but, and this is why I see it very critical, and I also see it personally very critical to build new nuclear power plants. If you think about sustainability and if you think about your coming generations, it does not produce greenhouse gases, so it has nothing is not directly linked to climate change. But what are you doing with the nuclear waste? It has to be somewhere, and there is a huge discussion in Germany where to put it, because of course everybody wants to have cheap electricity, but you would never want to have the nuclear waste in your backyard. And I think also Egyptians don't want to have this in their backyard. So I think it's kind of short-sighted to build nuclear power plants, because first it takes years until they produce energy, and then where to go with the waste.
But science never stops, Laura. I mean, maybe in 5 to 10 years' time, when we here are going to depend a little bit on our nuclear plants on our nuclear power, scientists are all the time in research and studying, and maybe what you're saying now as a crisis or a problem without a solution, this should not be the case in 5 years' time, for example.
Well, I think that's a risky hope. I mean, I hope somebody will find a solution for the nuclear waste.
I think that there's a comment here.
I doubt, first of all, scientists in the world can make a disaster. And when we look at the history, okay, we have a lot of problem created by scientists, yeah? And then the coming generation of scientists sit 10, 20 years, 30 years, solves the problem some scientists have created. So if we look at the history, we're talking about sustainability, climate change, and what's happened. If you look at the development of the industry, we went completely a wrong way to, for example, the chemical way. Okay, we also went to the nuclear way. So the nuclear way, okay, we can produce energy, as Mrs. Uxela said, without emission, CO2 emission or greenhouse gas emission. But where after that the nuclear waste, what would we do? We have a problem worldwide. There is no solution, and I mean, we know now, we have enough information to know about the geology, everything about our Earth, and where is the places we can save that. But there is no safety, and therefore I believe scientists who we are not able to assess the risk in 10, 20 or 30 years. We are not living alone in one generation, we are coming generation. We have to provide them the security, and we do not, I love really to make research in anything. I do love that. But I think we have to limit the application of such research in the world. Yeah? So, but with the nuclear power in Egypt, it has not really, I believe, we have the power of Egypt. I see it in the resources Egypt have and not used efficiently, which is the sun, the
Wind.
seaweed, wind also, yeah, the seawater and the desert, and for sure the human resource. So actually what we should do, the solar and the wind, as you are saying, this is really a high power in Egypt, which should be used to desalinate the water, yeah, and if we desalinate the seawater, actually we can make a lot of agriculture areas in the desert land. We are free of this stress of the water scarcity in Egypt, yeah.
But
I
what are the
believe
probabilities,
nuclear
sir?
power is more politician, yeah. And maybe I have to say here, we have to have some understanding to this politician decision. But I think as a scientist, not only in Egypt, worldwide, should support actually not this direction. We should stop actually nuclear power worldwide.
Yes, indeed. But what are the probabilities and possibilities, sir? But first, we can watch these photos, sir, on the left of the screen. Yes, what's your comment, sir, about the photos that you... Dr. Hani, what are the chances of using the sources that you have been talking about, the solar energy, the wind, the desalination of the seawater in Egypt?
The power, yeah, actually we have, we are now under the water poverty line, far under it.
Yeah.
We are increasing, our estimation says from the World Bank, we are reaching at least 120 million Egyptian in 2050. It means we need, for the economical water requirement, we need for each person 1,700 cubic meter per capita and year. It means if we multiply that, we need over 207 billion cubic meter of water. We don't have this. And even if we are using, as a lot of talks, the improving the treatment of the wastewater and using it, it's not sufficient. We have to go the way of desalination. There's no other solution. This is a power that we have, the tools for the energy like the sun and the wind, in producing the energy. And I believe here is a part of the scientist, and I believe the Egyptian has to find their own solutions for the desalination problem. But then maybe they need some expert in technology. And we have last week in the climate talk in the German embassy, organized by the German embassy. We have talking with the German colleagues and try to do some project between the German and Egyptian.
This was my coming question regarding the
desalination.
Department of Science. And forgive my ignorance, I didn't know that there is departments of science inside the embassies in Egypt. And here you were the head of this department in the German embassy. Your role, of course, it's of a huge importance when it comes to studies and to scientific research. But I'd like first to know if you do have coordination between the scientific research centers in Egypt, whether with the Ministry of Scientific Research, whether the National Research Center, whether from the scientific departments in many of the Egyptian universities, whether the private ones or the governmental ones, and how much this coordination is fruitful. I mean, on the ground, not only on paper. I mean.
Maybe just to comment very quickly on the photos which I saw on the left side of the screen. This was pictures taken at the 35th session of the Cairo Climate Talks. We've been talking about the Nile, about water resources, and about using them in a sustainable way, where we then came to the topic of agriculture. So these were photos of the sessions, of the opening remarks of the ambassador and participants of the ministries of private sector and of course academia. And this brings me to the point regarding the work of the science department. So I don't think many embassies in Egypt have science departments, and only the very big embassies of Germany abroad have science departments. But we do have one in Egypt because science cooperation between universities is one of our main pillars of our bilateral relations. It's very traditional. Since years we have an exchange of researchers, Egyptians going to Germany, Germans coming to Egypt. This year we reached a number of, I think, almost 2,500 individuals for short or long-term stays going to Germany, well, Egyptians going to Germany and Germans coming to Egypt. We have large-scale projects like a satellite campus of the Technical University Berlin at the Red Sea in El Gouna. We have a German university here in Cairo. And we have lots of binational master programs, which I like very much, because it, in the end you have international groups of students, and they study both in Egypt and in Germany until they have their master degree, which is awarded by a German and an Egyptian institution together. And to bridge the topic to what we are talking about now, which is a sustainable resource or sustainable use of resources and especially water, we can say that many of these programs and many of the projects actually target these issues. Because if we enhance cooperation, we try to identify together with the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, together with the scientists, the Egyptians who work here, we try to identify priority areas. And priority areas are, of course, energy engineering, water engineering, urban development, topics like this. So our goal is to really train Egyptians, both Egyptians and Germans and others, in exactly those topics, because it's global phenomena that have to be tackled on a global basis.
Indeed.
You allow me, please, to say something also about that?
We have 30 seconds, sir.
Okay, yeah, because
wrap
the
up.
German embassy and the DRD, they are supporting a very important project in that, which is afforestation in Egypt using sewage water. So we are treating the sewage water and using for the afforestation. And at the end, when we have a large area of forestry, it may rain. This is very important part how to tackle things.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. Dr. Hani Al-Katib, our dear guests, unfortunately we're running out of time. Dr. Hani Katib, forest biometrician and advisor of the President for Agriculture, Mrs. Laura Ogzela, head of the Science Department in the German Embassy here in Cairo. Thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much for being with us, and have a very good day.
Thank you very much. And now we come to the end of our edition from the Breakfast Show. We were talking about the climate change. Today, in a few minutes, we see the inaugural session of the UN Climate Change in Paris, France, which is attended by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, as well as many world leaders. At the end of the episode, I would like to thank my dear colleague Nermeen.
Thank you very much, Maisa. I enjoyed my time as usual. And we are going to leave you with our dear colleague Dina Yunus with some of the touristic destinations we have, and enjoy living in Egypt.
Is one of the symbols of the gods. It's called Nahah in ancient Egyptian, and it means authority. To relate it with our modern times,